All of us experience stress and hardships. What we don't know is that we ourselves are responsible for making ourselves suffer in the first place. Fortunately, Stoicism is here to help us move past and conquer our problems. When people hear Stoicism, they immediately think of ancient greats like Marcus Aurelius and Cato the Young, or former presidents like George Washington and Theodore Roosevelt. This makes them feel that you have to meet certain qualifications first in order to become a Stoic. However, this is not the case. In this book, the author lists down the ways by which we too can embrace Stoicism in our everyday lives. Keep in mind that Stoicism is a philosophy which helps us overcome obstacles, and certainly, all of us have obstacles to face for which it will become unhandy. As you read through this book, you will realize that Stoicism is not only a war philosophy, but something we can embrace in our day-to-day lives. But in order to fully embrace this philosophy, we must take things slow. Each chapter in this book will represent a month, and each discussion is what you will reflect on in that specific day. Thus, there is no rush into reading everything at once. After all, true learning is not measured by how many books you've read. Instead, it is measured by how well you were able to understand what a book is trying to convey. January. Clarity. January 1st. For the first day of the year, we must learn how to identify the things which fall under our control, on those which do not. Once we are able to do so, we must shift our focus towards the things we can change. Keep in mind that when we focus too much on the things which we cannot change, we end up spending time and effort on the wrong things, and as a result, we end up feeling stressed out and unhappy in the long run. January 2nd. Often we think that books are simply written to provide us with entertainment during our spare time. Instead of looking at them as mere objects, we should try to look at them as sources of wisdom and learning. They must be seen as tools to provide us with further education, that they have a purpose. When we think of them in this way, then we won't be easily distracted by unnecessary activities. Additionally, the knowledge we acquire will help set us free. January 3rd. For the third day, the author wants us to say no to the things that don't matter. We are all familiar with regret-filled instances when we said yes to something that we don't really want to do, and this is exactly what the author wants us to avoid. When we finally say no to requests we don't want to do, we shift our focus towards accomplishing the things which truly matter in our lives. The author understands that it may hurt a few people in the process, and that may cause you to think twice about saying no. When this happens, keep in mind that you are living in is your own life. You deserve to enjoy it on your own terms. January 4th. For this day, the author simply wants to share that Stoic philosophy only has 3 essential disciplines which can help us with our day-to-day lives. The first is to have the ability to control our perceptions. The second is to be able to properly direct our actions. And the last one is to have the will to accept that certain things are beyond our control. January 5th. At this point, we must understand the need to have clear goals for the future. This, however, does not mean that we simply need a goal. Instead, it must be a goal that's clearly defined by us. Without being clear with our intentions and goals, then we spend each day wandering aimlessly and achieving nothing at all. January 6th. The questions of who, what, where, and why are often thrown our way, so we never really thought about answering them with a deeper perspective. The author encourages us to take a pause for a while and think about giving substantive answers to these questions. This will provide us with clarity as to who we really are and what we want to do in life. January 7th. In order to dive deeper into clarity, the author wants us to know that the mind only has 7 functions. These functions are as follows. Choice, the ability to do and think what's right. Refusal, the ability to reject any form of temptation. Yearning, the ability to hope for the better. Repulsion, the ability to lean away from negativity and other bad influences. Preparation, the ability to be ready for what lies ahead. Purpose, the ability to have guiding principles and to determine priorities. Assent, the ability to accept what is and what isn't within our control. Beyond these 7 functions, we must already consider them as pollution or corruption, thought processes which do more harm than good. January 8th. Sometimes we may think that minor indulgences are harmless. However, these indulgences can cloud our clarity and, as a result, they can spiral out of control and turn into serious addictions. To prevent this from happening, we must regain control of our desires and abstain. When we are capable of abstaining from our addictions, we gain control of our lives. January 9th. At this point, we are now aware that there are certain things we cannot control. For today, the author encourages us to refrain from controlling the external events that happened. And instead of controlling the situation itself, we try to control what we think about it instead. This exercise will help us focus on our inner control, which in turn helps us develop clarity around the things that truly matter, what's inside our minds. January 10th. Stoic philosophy helps us live steady, stable, and tranquil lives. In order to achieve this, we must use our reason to filter out the outside world. But before doing so, we must make sure that our reason is not polluted or corrupted by the external world. Otherwise, we cannot experience clarity and internal chaos will ensue. January 11th. We previously learned that serenity and stability result from our choices based on reason. However, we must not completely shut away all disruptions. Instead, we must distinguish between disruptive events and disruptive judgments. The former is a normal part of life, while the latter is a thought process which can cause more problems. Thus, what we must truly avoid are disruptive judgments. January 12th. As soon as you wake up today, remind yourself of the things you can control and the things you can't. Throughout the day, the author encourages us to continually remind ourselves that we are responsible for making our own choices and that there are certain things which are beyond our control. And as we prepare for bed, we must keep in mind that sleep is a form of surrender, which helps us prepare for a whole new day. January 13th. The author states that the only thing that matters is what's inside of our circle of control, our mind. Aside from helping us narrow down what we're responsible for, it also helps us focus on the things that matter. In contrast, those who do not know what's inside the circle of control are more prone to making corrupt choices and being busy with irrelevant matters. January 14th. To truly live the life we want, we must be free from external temptations. These temptations have various forms like gambling, gaming apps, gossip, and other similar time-consuming activities. To fight them, we must develop an awareness of what truly matters for us and carefully cut the strings of those which are simply trying to lure us into their trap. Otherwise, we will turn into their puppets. January 15th. The secret to attaining clarity is by living in tranquility, and in order to do so, we must get rid of any self-doubt. More importantly, we must trust that the path we're on is the right one and ignore all other distractions which we encounter along the way. January 16th. The study of this philosophy aims to get rid of routine behavior. In order to do so, we must identify the habits that we have already formed. January 17th. For today, the author wants to remind us that success or failure is not defined by the grades or trophies we received. Instead, it is defined by the quality of life you have. We must reflect on that before anything else. January 18th. We must learn to see the beauty in the ordinary. This helps change our perspective from something dark and depressing to something that is filled with joy, light, and clarity. January 19th. Wherever we are in life, one thing remains constant. We have freedom of choice. Knowing this helps us focus only on things that we have control over. Once we understand that, we become closer to achieving clarity. January 20th. Today, the author wants us to know that the choice is ours to restart whenever we feel like life is being problematic. After all, everything that had happened, even if it just happened 5 minutes ago, is all in the past now. Choose to move forward and simply restart life. January 21st. From today onwards, the author wants us to start each day with a morning ritual. This will help us reflect on what's happening inside us and will serve as a guide for how we make choices and live our lives. We can do so in different forms like meditation, exercise, or journaling. Whatever makes us feel more connected with our inner self will do. January 22nd. Stoics keep journals where they write down their thoughts and reviews from their thoughts and actions. For them, this was a way to develop personal clarity. The author encourages us to do the same. January 23rd. We should keep reminding ourselves that money will never be able to solve internal issues. The solution will show itself only when we finally attain clarity. January 24th. When we read, we must not only scan each page with our eyes, instead we must absorb each line and try to understand what it is trying to convey. This deep reading is what the author wants us to develop, and that is why he only provides us with brief passages for each day. January 25th. When we develop clarity, we also develop prioritization, since we already know which ones matter for us. This can help us stay focused on doing what we love most, and that alone can guarantee that we will enjoy our lives. After all, the more time we spend on superficial desires, the less time we're spending on those that make us happy. January 26th. A mantra is a word or phrase which provides us with clarity and spiritual guidance. For today, the author encourages us to create a mantra which will help us find clarity and stick to it. January 27th. In order to attain clarity and success, there are only 3 areas of training that we must focus on. First is to decide what we want and what we don't want. Second is to observe our motivations, and the last is to observe our judgment and reason. When we realize that these areas are interconnected, we become a step closer to attaining clarity. January 28th. For today, the author wants us to pick a role model. This should be a person that you're really looking up to. And whenever you encounter a problem, ask yourself what that person would or wouldn't do. Then try to do the same. January 29th. Each day we can be overwhelmed by distractions and problems. Keep in mind that we have the choice to steer clear from these distractions. Choose to stay focused on the things that truly matter. It's really as simple as that. January 30th. We are living in a highly connected world, and that makes information available at the tip of our fingers. This can make us feel like we have to be on top of everything. However, the author shares that there is no concrete evidence that we have to be doing so. He reminds us that when we try to be on top of things all the time, we end up consuming our time, energy, and brain power on trivial matters. January 31st. Stoicism is like our soul's medicine. Aside from helping us focus on what we have to do, it also helps us restore the energy we need in order to attain our goals, knowing this is enough to keep us going on this journey. February. Passions and emotions. February 1st. Truth, strength lies in knowing that we cannot be shaken by anything. In order to develop that kind of strength, we must learn to control our passions and emotions instead of allowing them to control us. February 2nd. We must keep in mind that we are independent, self-sufficient people. When we allow our emotions to take over, we become slaves to it. To avoid this, think of our emotions as a person who tries to boss us around. After all, we don't want that to happen, do we? February 3rd. Anxiety is caused by a desire over something that is beyond our control. When we feel anxious, try to reflect on it and ask if it's doing us any good. Most importantly, ponder on who truly is in control. The answer should always be ourselves. February 4th. According to Epictetus, a person who is truly invincible is one who cannot be upset by anything beyond his choices. We must keep this in mind whenever we start to feel overwhelmed by our emotions. February 5th. Life can throw so many things our way, so we think it's only natural to react to them with our impulses. However, doing so can be quite exhausting. Instead of letting these impulses control you, remind yourself who is truly in control. You. In other words, think before you act. February 6th. One of the main goals of Stoicism is to help us attain peace, but there can be no peace if we try out activities with no clear purpose for trying them in the first place. The author reminds us to not be afraid of being still, for it is a sign of true strength. February 7th. Fear is a powerful emotion. But what we should really be afraid of is the outcome whenever we act out on our fears. Sometimes these can even become worse than what we dreaded in the first place. Instead of overthinking and giving in to our fears, the author reminds us that we should always practice self-control. After all, it is the secret of powerful and successful people. February 8th. Whenever our emotions get the best of us, we often end up freaking out or throwing a tantrum. When this happens, ask yourself, is this helping? More often than not, that tantrum is not helping at all. The author shares that we should do this whenever we feel empowered by our emotions, since it reminds us that we are in control. February 9th. For today, the author wants us to try having zero thoughts about anything, especially those which might tend to upset us. All we have to do is pretend that the upsetting situation never happened at all. The more we practice, the more we realize that we have control over our emotions. February 10th. Extreme negative emotions can be toxic for us. This is especially true when it comes to anger. Sometimes we think anger can be a fuel to achieve greatness, but the author shares that this only has short-lived effects. When the anger fuel wears off, we realize that what we built isn't really something we want for ourselves, and that can be a waste of time, money, and energy. February 11th. There is a common misconception that power can corrupt us. However, the author believes that power can only corrupt us if we allow it to. Today, remind yourself that you have the choice of becoming either a tyrant or a king. February 12th. Our lives aren't perfect. There are things which can cause so much stress. Whenever this happens, the author wants us to know that we have the choice to let go of those that don't matter. Today, he wants us to reflect on this question. Is this what I want? The answer will guide us to make the change our life needs. February 13th. According to the author, today is our cheat day from self-control. He encourages us to give in to our temptations, but only to observe its effects on us. This will help us realize that resisting them is better than indulging them. February 14th. For today, the author wants to remind us that we should always think before we act. This will not only help us focus on our priorities, but it can also veer us away from making mistakes. February 15th. Stoics believe that the things that are usually upset us are the mere products of our imagination. To counter these thoughts, we must understand that they are only bad dreams and that reality cannot be affected by them. If you choose not to be affected, that is. February 16th. Today, the author wants us to know that our emotions only make life hard for us because we allow them to do so. Thus, we must continuously practice control over them. After all, we shouldn't make things harder than they already are. February 17th. We often look to the future, thinking that this is where our happiness lies. However, we can only experience true happiness if we remain focused on the here and now. Hoping to find happiness in the future is the enemy of our true happiness. February 18th. We are capable of weathering any storm as long as we plan ahead to prepare. The same is true for our internal emotions. We can struggle against them if we know how to listen to the warnings and prepare. February 19th. For today, the author encourages us to act on life as if we were in a banquet. The author shares that we experience a myriad of positive experience when we are in a banquet, like gratitude, selflessness, charity, and enjoying the present. We must always live by these positive reactions wherever we are and whatever we're doing in life. February 20th. Temptations are everywhere. Whenever we feel tempted to give in to seemingly harmless vice or to give in to a craving, the author wants us to consider the following questions. Is it worth it? Is it truly pleasurable? More often than not, the answer is no. February 21st. Our desires make us vulnerable to the actions of fate because it can make us lose our self-control. To identify whether our goals are mere desires or not, we must reflect on this question. Who is in control? The answer should always be, I am in control. February 22nd. Cato always respected on his thoughts first before saying anything, and that made him one of the best leaders the world ever had. We can do the same by avoiding to speak prematurely. Always ponder on your words first. Are your words worthy of being heard? February 23rd. Whenever we feel overwhelmed by circumstances, remind yourself to never give in. After all, these circumstances are incapable of caring for your feelings, so regardless of how hard you shout and cry, it will never change, except that it is beyond your control. February 24th. Today, the author wants to remind us that bad things happen to us because we labeled them as bad in the first place. If we truly reflect on the situation at hand, we will realize that whether something is to be seen as good or bad depends on how we appreciate it. February 25th. The author discourages us from enslaving ourselves to work for the sake of a happier tomorrow, because that will only leave us feeling miserable at present. After all, our time on Earth is only limited, so we should always find a way to enjoy the here and now. February 26th. When someone makes us angry, we usually let them know about it, and more often than not, it often fills us with regret as soon as the anger begins to fade. Thus, whenever you feel like lashing out on someone, think about whether you'd benefit from it or not first. February 27th. Stoics cultivate indifference. Some Stoics, like Seneca, were extremely wealthy, yet they were indifferent towards the wealth. They understand that these items are fleeting, so they choose to enjoy them as present, and with no attachment in case they get lost or destroyed. February 28th. It's normal to make mistakes, but what's not normal is to let it affect you to the point where you lose composure. Remember that what you've learned up to this day remains unchanged, and it will remain so even when you experience extreme emotions. Keep this in mind whenever we feel our emotions taking over. February 29th. We experience happiness when we live balanced lives, and in order to do so, we must know how to prioritize. To help us focus on our priorities, the author wants us to reflect on the following questions. Do I need it? If I don't get it, what will happen? Can I proceed with my life without it? March. Awareness. March 1st. Awareness stems from the ability to analyze our own thoughts. This is the key to starting any philosophy, including Stoicism. Today we begin with the first step, by realizing that our lives are actually worth living. March 2nd. Today we should conduct an accurate self-assessment. The author points out that this can help us see who we truly are. In doing so, we must refrain from seeing ourselves as more or less than who we truly are. We must be honest as we discern what we are truly capable of. March 3rd. Having self-awareness helps us become a unified being. This means that our internal feelings do not contradict what is happening on the outside. To attain this awareness and peace of mind, we focus on what's inside us, for doing so prevents us from being swayed by our conflicting desires. March 4th. Today the author wants us to realize that a huge chunk of our obligations are merely self-imposed. He instructs us to make an inventory of our obligations from time to time and distinguish between those which are self-imposed and those which are truly necessary. March 5th. Everything has a cost, even if we acquired certain items for free. According to the author, these items tend to take up space, so we're paying for its storage. Additionally, the fact that we think about it from time to time also means that it's taking up storage in our brain, storage which can be used for more important things. Thus, he encourages us to make an inventory of our possessions and ask, do I really need this, and what is this costing me? March 6th. For today, we must understand that living means to dwell on what's real at the moment. As much as possible, we must refrain from telling stories of our past because it only makes us look self-absorbed. Instead, really listen and connect with the people around you. March 7th. To obtain self-awareness, we must learn to evaluate ourselves from an objective perspective, and doing so requires strict scrutiny of our emotions. Think about it. Our senses often make mistakes, and our emotions tend to overreact, so it's always best to think things through before coming up with a conclusion. March 8th. We are only distracted by external forces because we allow ourselves to be distracted. The author emphasizes the need to focus on looking inward, because only the mind is capable of controlling our perceptions and reactions. March 9th. A famous quote from Jim Rohn states that we are the average of the 5 people we spend most of the time with. With this in mind, the author wants us to be more discerning about the people we meet. Questions like, are my friends helping me improve, and should I spend more or less time with them, are helpful. March 10th. Cato the Younger is cited in Stoic literature, not for his own writings, but for his actions. As we progress on this journey towards Stoicism, the author encourages us to look for our own Cato, an indifferent spectator we can look up to, and a person who will quietly help us focus on the things that truly matter for us. March 11th. To be free means being a slave to nothing and no one. We must keep this in mind whenever we are tempted to do something we don't want to do, all for the name of success. After all, if you're working hard towards something you don't really want, then it can never be considered as true success at all. March 12th. What we consider as wrong is something that we have defined for ourselves. Often people commit actions which may be wrong for us, and yet they react as if it's perfectly fine. When we understand this difference is something within the minds of each person, we become more tolerant and understanding towards others. March 13th. When we're too focused on our plans, we end up fighting against things that actually happen in reality. We need to remember that certain circumstances are beyond our control and that it is not the end of the world when you end up a little delayed in fulfilling your plans. March 14th. Self-deception is our enemy because it hinders our ability to learn and grow. When we think we're already perfect, then we believe that we no longer have anything else to learn and develop. We must reflect on this whenever we feel like ego's taking over. March 15th. For today, the author wants us to take note of the times we wish that our past was different, or wish that our future would, as we've always wanted. This will make us aware of the times we've neglected to stop and enjoy the present. March 16th. Don't take your abilities for granted. Not everyone has the ability to think, read, or reason out. Today, we should be grateful for our abilities. March 17th. True beauty refers to our inner beauty, and that is made possible when we make beautiful choices. Knowing this alone can make us think twice about making our choices. March 18th. The author wants us to know that all our emotions occur on the inside. Thus, we can only feel frustration, jealousy, and other negative emotions when we allow ourselves to feel them. Think about this when someone makes you feel these emotions and allow yourself to regain control. March 19th. We are in control of our emotions. It is all a matter of choosing to be affected by them or not. After all, these emotions result from expectations which were never met. This will help us understand that we have the power to choose what to feel. March 20th. Difficulties happen to everyone. What separates the Stoics from the average man is their ability to deal with their hardships. The author shares that we should always be prepared to meet them, like a visitor who has been waiting for. This gets us into the right mindset when dealing with all of our troubles. March 21st. We can experience peace without having to spend thousands of dollars on a grand vacation. Peace can be experienced by looking inward and by shutting off irrelevant thoughts in our head. March 22nd. True education is not attained by simply getting a degree. We only attain it when we understand that there are things beyond our control, so we ought to focus on those we can. March 23rd. When things go wrong, it is often because of lapses in our judgment. Sometimes our choices may be clouded by greed and vices, and that can only lead to further problems. Allow your rational mind to regulate these emotions before making choices. March 24th. There is a philosophy everywhere. Whatever you're doing or wherever you may be, make your choices based on your philosophy. This will help you take these teachings to heart. March 25th. For today, the author wants us to ponder on the following. If you keep on struggling to have wealth and freedom, then you can never have them. Instead, focus on what you already have and be wealthy and free now. March 26th. Today, the author wants us to dive deeper into how we reason out. He encourages us to take a look at various subjects that will help us understand how the rational mind works. Only with that deeper understanding can we truly experience awareness. March 27th. Consumerism makes us spend hundreds and thousands of dollars for things we can't take with us when we die. The author reminds us that only the good things in life are worth the cost, while the rest are simply unworthy. Let us be aware of the difference today. March 28th. Always have a plan and several backups in case the first one didn't go as planned. We only experience internal chaos when we feel unprepared for the battle ahead. March 29th. Today, the author reminds us that we don't have to impress people. No matter how hard we look, we will never find the reason why we should do so. March 30th. Today, we must reflect on this question. What rules our lives? The answer should be our reason. If you answer otherwise like impulse or emotions, then it's time to figure out why we're not in control of our own lives and change it. March 31st. From today onwards, always train yourself to be in control of your mind. This will help us realize the power we have over our situation, while also preventing us from being pushed around by external forces. April. Unbiased thought. April 1st. Our mind is capable of adjusting to what is normally encountered. Thus, we must choose to be positive so that our mind will develop a positive outlook. April 2nd. We will always be exposed to negative influences, but what we can do is to choose to not let them in. We are always in control. April 3rd. When we have two conflicting desires, we never succeed at either of them. To guarantee success, we must get rid of our inner conflict and focus only on the good side of our soul. April 4th. We all dream to be successful. When we finally attain success, we must never let it get up to our heads. Always choose to live with reason in control. April 5th. The author shares that we are all vulnerable to making prejudices. But instead of immediately believing them, try questioning these impressions first. This will help us look at things or people from a different perspective. April 6th. Today and in the succeeding days, the author wants us to prepare for negativity first in the morning. Preparing for negativity will help us act with patience and forgiveness if we ever come across it. April 7th. The author reminds us that we are not as smart as we think we are. This will help us get rid of our initial bias, especially if it is the only hindrance to our happiness. April 8th. Today we are encouraged to act on nothing that is untested. That is, we should never believe a principle simply because everyone believes in it. Turn to reason before you choose to believe in the same. April 9th. As previously mentioned, our senses are not always right. That is enough to make us question all of our first impressions. April 10th. Judgments destroy our inner peace. Thus, we must fight against them before they bring us any disturbance. As much as possible, we must observe everything objectively. April 11th. When we think we already know everything, we're only preventing ourselves to learn more. Be humble and all the learnings will follow. April 12th. Not all gifts of fortune will make us happy. Some can even lead us to trouble and danger. Before accepting these gifts, ask yourself whether it is something you really need. If not, then there's no harm in rejecting them. April 13th. The author wants us to live by the saying that less is more. This is especially true when we are tempted to show off and impress people. April 14th. We are experts at everything. Politics, pop culture, and other irrelevant information. But the author wants to be experts at those which truly matter. Life, happiness, and searching for meaning. April 15th. Everything in life has an inevitable toll attached to it. Instead of fighting off these taxes, we should just pay for them and enjoy the benefits that they will offer. April 16th. Today, the author wants us to observe our thoughts and the actions that stem from them. Reflect on the biases you may have and how it affects your behavior. April 17th. Keep in mind that a word can have multiple meanings. Knowing this can help us understand that how we feel and react all depends on how we interpret people's words. April 18th. Everyone has opinions, but these opinions are based on a person's set of beliefs, and that can easily push them to argue with others who believe otherwise. Thus, we must get rid of these opinions, judgments, or biases and see things just as they are. April 19th. Today we are reminded to always check our impulses. When we do so, we keep an open mind and learn from everyone. And this should always be true, regardless of how powerful or powerless we may be. April 20th. Good, as defined by Stoics, refers to the things which are unquestionably good. Wisdom, self-control, justice, and courage. We must keep this in mind as we move along on this journey. April 21st. We know we're in control if we're not distracted. The author shares that when we allow our attention to slide, we end up forming bad habits. Thus, we must never allow ourselves to be distracted. April 22nd. Today, the author wants us to develop being rational by doing 3 simple things: to look inward, to examine ourselves critically, and to make our own decisions. April 23rd. Our body is weak and susceptible to the world around us, whereas our mind will always be within our control. Thus, we must always choose to take care of it. April 24th. For today, the author encourages us to observe things with contempt. He shares that doing so will help us look at things with objectivity, which in turn will make us more productive. April 25th. When someone points out that we are wrong, we often feel down about it. However, the author wants us to simply accept it and move on. After all, being wrong doesn't make you less of a person, so why would you allow one small mistake to bother you? April 26th. Today, the author encourages us to see each day as if it is a training exercise. When we do so, we develop a more resilient attitude instead of one which is always afraid of committing mistakes. April 27th. Just as how we can give a word various meanings, we can also view situations from various perspectives. This can give seemingly negative situations a whole new meaning and making us more appreciative of it along the way. April 28th. Our wants make us servants to those who have them. To be in control and to be truly powerful, we have to be indifferent towards irrelevant material items. April 29th. When we are tempted to believe that our body is the most important thing in the world, look around and bask upon the vastness of nature. This will help us realize that there are things far bigger than ourselves. April 30th. For today, the author wants us to determine the things which are in keeping with our character. He goes on to explain that knowing the whats and whys of our beliefs can effectively shield us from the myriad of temptations surrounding us. May. Right action. May 1st. What we believe in should never be reflected in what we wear. Instead, these should be reflected in our character and how we live our lives. May 2nd. Nothing will happen if we do not act on our thoughts. Today, begin working on the person you've always wanted to be. May 3rd. Whenever you feel tempted to show off what you know, pause for a while and reflect. Would it be better to say it in words or to show examples through actions? May 4th. Truly impressive people are the ones who act selflessly for the benefit of others. Keep this in mind whenever you are tempted to impress people through material possessions. May 5th. A popular saying states that practice makes perfect. The same is true for our mind. We must continuously work to improve it. May 6th. Different people have varying opinions of what is beautiful. For Stoics, being beautiful means being righteous without prejudice and acting with justice. This is the kind of beautiful we should aspire to be. May 7th. Today, the author wants us to know the secret to having a good day by simply doing good things. He reminds us that other sources of joy is already beyond our control, so we should focus on the good that we already have inside us. May 8th. As we make choices today, we must keep in mind that our reason always leads us to the right choice. Focus on this choice and ignore all other options. May 9th. Each day is only composed of 24 hours. Choose to seize the day and spend your time wisely. May 10th. Most of us have a favorite quote where we draw attention from. Today, instead of just admiring them, the author wants us to act on them to serve as an example for others. May 11th. Living in guilt is no way to live. In fact, the author believes that it is worse than being stuck in jail. He encourages us to confess all of our guilt so that we may experience peace of mind today. May 12th. Today, the author wants to remind us that no matter how many people would treat us, always reply to them with kindness. He shares that being rude masks an internal weakness and that only the truly strong can respond with kindness. If we possess that strength, then we might as well use it. May 13th. Today, the author encourages us to list down our activities last week. Are they in line with the person we want to be? Our actions develop into our character, and that is determinative of who we will become in the future. May 14th. When we do something for others, our focus must be to help them and not to be praised. Through this, we will live in contentment and resilience. May 15th. Today, the author wants us to stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. Instead, he wants us to be grateful and to take advantage of what we already have. May 16th. For today, the author teaches us how to use the chain method in building our positive habits. For this activity, we need a calendar where we can note down the positive things we did today. Noting these things down will help us continue doing so on the succeeding days until we finally develop a habit. May 17th. Stoics are known to behave perfectly in every situation. However, before they reach that perfect form, they had to undergo serious training day by day. Thus, we must also work hard to achieve this ideal. May 18th. Today, the author wants us to pause and reflect on how we handle our affairs. This will serve as our guide in determining how we will be handling our affairs in the future. Are you satisfied with what you're doing now? If not, there's still time to improve. May 19th. Everything we have learned to this day will be useless if we fail to act on them. Starting today, be aware of how you're embracing these principles. This will help you in your training towards becoming a successful Stoic. May 20th. Being well-read is something to brag about, but the author shares that more important than the number of books we have read is the depth of our understanding of what the book contains. He adds that this is what's important in life because the principles mentioned in the book will help us move forward. May 22nd. We are prone to procrastinating. For today, the author reminds us that if we want to be good tomorrow, then we should start being good now. May 23rd. We all dream of a life well lived. In order to do so, we must focus on the present. By simply paying attention to our current concerns, we begin to understand what it means to be living. May 24th. Today, the author wants us to know that we are capable of making our own good fortune. Focus on doing the right thing at the right time, and everything else will follow. May 25th. We do not have to search far to find joy. If we focus on proper human work like being kind, indifference towards material wants, and similar activities, we will find joy. May 26th. When we're about to do something, we often stop and think about what others will think. The author wants us to refrain from doing so. Instead, reflect on what the outcome and impact of your actions would be. This will help us determine if it is the right thing to do. May 27th. Today we think about the small choices we make and reflect on what these small efforts turned out to be. This will help us realize that they can add up, so we must always choose with reason, no matter how small the task seems to be. May 28th. The author wants us to know that there are only two things we have to consider before acting. First is to not be upset, and the second is to let our reason guide us to do the right thing. May 29th. When we are not being productive with them, we tend to feel down. Thus, the author reminds us that our mind and body are meant to be used. Choose to get out and work. It is the best therapy when we're feeling down. May 30th. The author wants us to reflect on how we're spending our time at work. He asks us to evaluate our work, ponder on why we're doing it, and reflect on where these accomplishments will take us. If we can't find decent answers, then it might not be the right work for us. May 31st. Throughout our life, we only have one true obligation, and that is to be a good human being. Start working on that job today. June. Problem solving. June 1st. The Stoic mind must have a reverse clause. This is the ability of the mind to learn from obstacles and how to move past them. This keeps us prepared for what lies ahead. June 2nd. The author wants us to understand that some problems can be solved when we try to look at the bigger picture. This is what the author calls Plato's view, and is something that we should all do when faced with problems. June 3rd. Stoics are known to be determined yet flexible individuals. If plan A doesn't work out, there's always plan B. If that doesn't work out, then we can try plan C. Keep in mind that there will always be something that we can be good at, even by simply being a good human being. June 4th. For today, we are simply reminded that life is not meant to be easy or fair. When life leaves us shaken, remember that our ancestors survived similar or worse struggles. If they can survive them, then so can we. June 5th. Throughout this journey, life will knock us down several times. When this happens, keep in mind that we have the choice to save ourselves. After all, succumbing to self-pity will not accomplish anything. June 16th. When the path we chose suddenly seems like the wrong path, we shouldn't be afraid to make the switch. If we truly feel that it is no longer the right path for us, then there truly is no reason to stay, and that alone can take up a lot of courage. June 7th. Today we are encouraged to look for a mentor to look up to. Books containing the wisdom of great people in history are easily available, so we have no excuse to have no mentor at all. June 8th. To be able to face any obstacle, we must always keep one foot forward. To do so, we must arrange our actions in the order as guided by our reason. Doing so is like building a plan of action for our own life. June 9th. Problems should never be put on hold. If we have the chance to solve it as its onset, we mustn't hesitate on doing so. After all, it's better to have an answer before it blows out of proportion. June 10th. From today onwards, we must embrace the fact that if others can do it, so can we. Thus, instead of being filled with jealousy, the accomplishments of others must only fill us with inspiration. June 11th. We can make matters worse when we add our negative emotions into the equation. Today, start practicing the habit of not making things worse. June 12th. For today, the author wants to remind us that we are capable of adapting to any contingency. Although we do not have concrete plans, the ability to adapt and change will be enough to help us conquer any adversary. June 13th. We all know that life is a battlefield. To be ready for battle, we must possess discipline, fortitude, courage, clear-headedness, selflessness, and sacrifice. On the other hand, the attributes of cowardice, rashness, disorganization, overconfidence, weakness, and selfishness are guaranteed to make us lose the battle. Focus on the only attributes that matter. June 14th. There are two ways to react to someone who has wronged us: to be affected by it or to recover from it. Always choose recovery because only that choice can help in uplifting us. June 15th. For today, the author shares the reasons why wise people only have a few problems. 1. They don't expect what doesn't seem possible. 2. They consider both the best and worst cases that could happen. 3. They act wisely by being prepared with a reverse clause. June 16th. Our pride stops us from asking help for others, even when we desperately need it. Keep in mind that we were born into this world as helpless individuals, so there is nothing shameful in asking for help. June 17th. We often chase after fortunes thinking that it will make us happier. However, Seneca believed that the more we run after fortune, the more vulnerable we become to it. The ends up controlling us. Do we want to be that person? June 18th. Today, the author wants us to stay active. That problems and difficulties must always be faced with acceptance and a readiness to work through them. June 19th. For today, the author simply wants to remind us to stay focused on the present. Looking at the big picture helps us solve problems, but it can be counterproductive in terms of living and enjoying the here and now. June 20th. Whenever we face an alarming situation, keep in mind that panicking won't help. Instead, stay calm and help others calm down. Only then will you be able to focus and deal with what's in front of you. June 21st. Walking is a great way to find inner peace. Today, when the world around you seems too loud and stressful, stand up and take a walk. June 22nd. Failure is inevitable, but learning from failure is a conscious choice we can make to avoid making the same mistake all over again. Don't allow yourself to get stuck in that unsuccessful pattern. June 23rd. Today we should remind ourselves that the things that make us happy all depend on our choices. Stop complicating things and simply choose to be happy. June 24th. Those who are truly educated don't go into arguments. Before joining an argument, ponder first if that argument is going to help you solve anything. More often than not, arguments don't solve anything. June 25th. The best way to help others is to simply listen to them. Most of the time, people tell you their problems not because they need your opinion, but simply because they need someone to hear them out. June 26th. Today, the author wants us to try doing the opposite of what we normally do. This activity can help us identify our good habits and change the bad ones. June 27th. For today, the author wants us to take note of how we react to minor adversaries. Instead of complaining, the wise thing to do is to simply accept them and move forward. June 28th. Embracing philosophy doesn't mean self-flagellation. It means simple living while focusing on what you need and want. There's no need to deprive yourself of what you love. June 29th. If others can do something, then so can we. Today we should bear in mind that we have no excuses to not be the person we've always wanted to be. June 30th. Every day we are bound to face obstacles. Whenever this happens, remember everything you've learned so far about Stoicism. After all, only you have the power to take negativity and turn it into an opportunity to learn and grow. July. Duty. July 1st. Everything and everyone has a purpose, and in this life, our only duty is to be good human beings. Today, make sure to work on that duty. July 2nd. Our duty to be good will not always be easy. Whatever our circumstance may be, we should let this duty guide us always. It may be hard, but it's what's right, and that's all that matters. July 3rd. For today, the author wants our will to adjust to what happens to the world, instead of opposing it upon the world. After this, observe how everything just falls into place. July 4th. Each person has goodness inside of him, and it is his duty to protect it. We must always do what's right so that our flame of goodness would never run out of fuel. July 5th. As previously mentioned, being good is never easy because of the many temptations around us. Fortunately, we are aware that we have the capacity to resist these temptations. Keep that in mind whenever you're drawn to the superficial. July 6th. Stoics are called with the duty to do the greater good. However, how can we fulfill our duty if we don't get out of bed? Keep that thought in mind whenever you don't feel like waking up in the morning. July 7th. We have the duty to learn. The author wants to emphasize that this is not the kind of learning that is meant to impress our teachers, but the kind of learning which will help us how to survive, and more importantly, how to be good human beings. July 8th. We may not realize it, but we can spend several hours a day on complaining, and that is never a productive use of time. Today, the author wants us to stop monkeying around and take responsibility for whatever is happening in our life right now. From this, character and self-respect will follow. July 9th. Good leadership stems from taking philosophy to heart. But even when we don't have a kingdom to rule, philosophy must always serve as our guiding light in every decision we make. This guarantees that we will do what's right. July 10th. People who often make it big in any industry are the ones who truly love what they're doing. We should learn through their example and begin to love what we're doing. July 11th. For today, the author wants us to reflect on how important life is. He shares that as soon as we realize how important it is, we begin to treat it seriously, and as a result, we begin to improve too. July 12th. According to Marcus Aurelius, there are 4 simple rules we have to keep in mind. Don't procrastinate what you have to do. Don't confuse your conversations. Don't wander with your thoughts. Don't be passive or aggressive with your soul. And don't be all about business. These are the only rules we have to remember as we fulfill our duties. July 13th. Good leaders are those who lead because they want to serve as a good example and not for the credit or recognition. They simply know that it is their duty to lead. Keep this in mind whenever you have to serve as a leader. July 14th. Today, the author wants to remind us that knowledge can have dangerous effects if we do not learn with humility. For example, we can get carried away by how fast we're learning, so we may be tempted to skip schemingly basic principles. As you learn, don't be in a rush and instead focus on humility. July 15th. Whenever we are tempted to seek recognition to do the right thing, remember that it is our duty to do so in the first place. With that said, then no recognition is needed in the first place. July 16th. Today, the author wants us to reflect on the progress of our soul. To do so, he asks us to ponder on the following questions. What are we committed to? What is our cause, mission, or purpose? Why are we doing what we're doing? Do these acts reflect the values we care about? In what ways are our daily activities consistent with the things we value? July 17th. Embracing this new philosophy may not be supported by all of your loved ones. When this happens, refrain from abandoning this new philosophy, or worse, refrain from abandoning them. Remember, you used to have the same mindset. July 18th. Today we learn to be masters of our own domain. In order to do so, we must live by 2 rules: to live our life without negatively imposing it on others, and to be open-minded and accepting to let others do the same. July 19th. A common quote stated by Plato, Jesus, and Marcus Aurelius is to forgive others for they do not know the truth. Keeping this in mind will help us become gentle to everyone. July 20th. We are rational beings created for the sake of protecting each other, a natural sense of justice. This is the reason why we don't like it whenever someone doesn't follow the rules. According to the author, we must embrace and support this duty towards justice. July 21st. Today the author reminds us that human beings exist for the purpose of cooperating with each other. Thus, when you don't feel like getting up in the morning, remind yourself that you have a duty to render work with others and that others are relying on you too. July 22nd. As we do our duties, the author wants to clarify that we must only do so voluntarily. Keep in mind that doing the right thing should never feel like a chore. July 23rd. In a day, we can experience both praise and criticism. Nonetheless, they must both be received with acceptance and indifference. In other words, we should not be filled with pride as we accept and honor. Neither should we be filled with humiliation as we listen to reproach. July 24th. When we hear bad news, our instant reaction is to sympathize. However, the author believes that emoting is only a waste of money. If we are able to actually do something to help, then do it. July 25th. Our ambitions can be great fuels to keep us working towards our goals. However, if we are too set on our future goals, we begin to fail living in the present. We must learn to strike a balance between work and rest. July 26th. Today, the author simply wants us to understand that humanity is capable of doing evil and that not doing evil is not enough. Instead, we should be good at all times and serve as an inspiration for the world around us. July 27th. When we finally achieve something we've always dreamed of, it usually takes a few days before the excitement wears off. This is due to the fact that we always strive to go after something better. Today, the author wants us to know that the only better things out there are the virtues of justice, honesty, discipline, and courage. These are the only things that we must chase after. July 28th. Today we learn to be more forgiving and tolerant of others. The author wants us to reflect on the privileges we possess and understand that not all of us possess the same. July 29th. All of us have negative parts of ourselves which we want to get rid of. Instead of seeking for treatment from psychologists or therapists, the author points out that the biggest cure for the self is philosophy. Philosophy, after all, is geared towards helping us live the good life. July 30th. We can only feel true joy when we have already attained a deep state of being. That is, when we are fully content with life, when we don't seem to have everything. Without this overwhelming feeling of contentment, we can never be truly joyful. July 31st. Today we are reminded that our career isn't the only thing that matters in our life. There's nothing wrong with loving your work, but if you build your whole life around it, then your life can become empty and meaningless. August. Pragmatism. August 1st. We begin this month by accepting that nothing is perfect. This will help us become more accepting and forgiving towards the minor inconveniences we encounter. August 2nd. Sometimes life can leave us feeling incapacitated. But regardless of how disabling it can be, we should always stay positive and find ways to make things work out. August 3rd. We are constantly in search for the good life, that there is always something better. However, the author believes that this belief is a mere product of self-deception. He explains that the good life can be found anywhere and can be enjoyed at any time, if we know how to live in the present. August 4th. When something doesn't go our way, we often blame God or others. Instead of drowning in this negative emotion, remind yourself that there are things that are beyond your control. We must remain focused on our reasoned choices. August 5th. People who are weak try to hide it by talking things out. Conversely, those who remain silent are the ones who are truly strong, for they understand that there is a great amount of strength needed in order to listen to another. August 6th. Having faith in yourself can change everything. Keep this in mind whenever you feel like giving up. August 7th. Today the author reminds us that we are capable of living well, whatever our situation may be. He draws inspiration from Abraham Lincoln, who was compassionate, fair, purposeful, open-minded, and deliberate, while also being a politician. August 8th. We should never fall for the traps of idealism. When we focus on these ideals, we keep looking on to the future. Instead, we should focus on what we can do now, because only then can we move forward. August 9th. When properly used, our first impressions can also help us grow. The author shares that we can find learnings from seeing things as they form an objective point of view. The key in this activity is to try to not get carried away by our first impressions. August 10th. Today we should remind ourselves to never aim for perfection. Instead, the author wants us to focus on any progress we can to work on today, because that is the only way for us to truly improve. August 11th. Sometimes we spend too much time worrying about the validity of the theories we're being taught. This is a waste of our time. Instead of worrying about theories, the author wants us to just deal with whatever's directly in front of us, because that's the only way we can move forward. August 12th. Stoicism is often criticized by academics for being repetitions of other philosophies. The author clarifies that all philosophies concern themselves with how things were done and not how they were said. They want to find ways to help people adapt to the real world, and authorship was the least of their concerns. August 13th. Today, remind yourself that reason should rule all the choices you make. Doing so every day will save us from a great deal of trouble. August 14. At this point, you may feel like being stoic can seem like no fun. However, philosophy isn't here to help you experience fun, it's here to help you experience life. August 15th. Today, remember that we are who we are because of our choices and actions. This helps us determine whether the pattern we have created is in line with our reason. If we like the pattern we're seeing, then we can choose to stick with it. If not, then we can always change it. August 16th. We are not born perfect. However, we have the choice to make use of what we were given and to use them to our advantage. August 17th. Today, the author challenges us to go on a day without blaming people or things. Observe how long you can do so without giving in and keep track of your progress. August 18th. We should never be in a rush to make decisions. No matter how big the problem is at hand, we must always proceed with reason. August 19th. Stoics are known to be busy people, yet they seem to have enough time on their hands for the things they love. The author explains that Stoicism helps people let go of the things outside of their control and focus on only what they can. By getting rid of the unnecessary, they have enough time on their hands for the things that truly matter. August 20th. The clothes we wear or the cars we drive wouldn't matter if we're rotten on the inside. Thus, the author insists on improving what we have inside instead of trying to transform our external world. August 21st. Our overthinking can create terrible scenarios in our head, and that can make us miserable in advance. When this happens, remind yourself that what caused you to worry is a mere figment of imagination. Choose to ignore these tempting thoughts now. August 22nd. Today we shouldn't allow ourselves to worry about the small stuff. If we spend a lot of time thinking about these small things, we end up making them bigger than they are. Thus, we must spend our time on our priorities: health, family, and commitments. August 23rd. We should not persuade people to change into what we think is right, but instead of forcing them to do so, why not show them examples instead and convince them to change? August 24th. There can be times when people we don't usually agree with will utter the most inspiring words. When this happens, the author encourages us to embrace and agree with that wisdom. After all, what's truly important is the learning you get from the wisdom and not your feelings towards who said it. August 25th. There's nothing wrong with believing in tradition. However, if new and better principles come along, we shouldn't hesitate to embrace them. Keep in mind that our ultimate goal here is to improve and learn as the days go by. August 26th. Today we are reminded of the importance of having a reverse clause. When we are prepared for any possible shipwreck, nothing can stop us from getting back up and moving forward. August 27th. Stoics are known to be indifferent to their feelings. The author explains that this stems from the fact that Stoics don't think anger or sadness makes them productive. In fact, these emotions only make us feel worse. It's all up to us to choose what to feel. August 28th. Today the author wants to remind us that we can be happy even when we don't see ourselves as wealthy. If we are too focused on wealth, we only become slaves to materialism. August 29th. Often the reason why we try to increase our wealth is because of our own material wants. When money seems too tempting, we must remind ourselves that the things we need, class, love, and respect, are actually free. August 30th. Being lazy results from our mind and body going in different directions. Thus, before we agree to work on something, reflect on whether you truly want to work on it. Otherwise, you will only be stuck trying to do something that your brain thinks is unproductive. August 31st. Today the author wants us to reflect on our failings. Before you lash out on others for their shortcomings and wrongdoings, remember that you were once guilty of the same mistakes. We must be gentle and forgiving towards others as we are to ourselves. September. Fortitude and resilience. September 1st. For the first day of September, the author wants us to become strong and resilient. To do so, we must practice being indifferent towards the judgment of everyone around us. Starting today, we must start practicing that indifference. September 2nd. The process of healing can hurt us. According to the author, this plan will help us develop endurance and perseverance towards difficulties. Instead of running away from the hurt, we should accept it as a part of the healing process. September 3rd. Today we are reminded that embracing a new philosophy won't be easy. In fact, the author likens the experience to a hard winter training. To successfully make it through, we should keep in mind that these hardships will sufficiently prepare us for what lies ahead. That thought is enough to keep us going. September 4th. We all want to have an easy life, so misfortunes are never welcome. However, we discover how strong we can be through these misfortunes. Instead of looking at these experiences from a negative perspective, we should see them as a formative experience. September 5th. Whenever we face adversaries, let us not focus on the hardships they bring us. Instead, we should focus on ourselves. This is the best way to survive. September 6th. No matter how hard people try to break us down, they can never do so as long as we have our freedom of choice. We must focus on this freedom whenever we face difficulties. September 7th. All humans are powerful beings because there is no greater power than our freedom to make decisions. Today, make sure that you make the right choices. September 8th. Today we are reminded once again not to fall for the temptations of fortune. Keep in mind that the more we're drawn to fortune, the higher it is the chance of destroying us. September 9th. Fear can cause a myriad of further misery, so it is something we should actually be fearful of. Fortunately, we have the power to resist fear from taking over our emotions. Choose to resist fear today. September 10th. Today the author encourages us to pretend to be experiencing misfortunes and observe how we try to resolve them. He explains that this will adequately prepare us in case the misfortune arrives. September 11th. Today the author wants us to start living modest lives and focus only on our needs. In this way we can be prepared in case anything we have is stripped away. September 12th. We must remember to stay humble. When we are overconfident, our internal bubble gets inflated. Unfortunately, life has many ways to burst that bubble. Keep in mind that if there is nothing to be popped, then life can never bring us down. September 13th. Stoics believe in an inner fortress that protects the soul, but although fortresses can be breached, ours is one which has strong walls, as long as we do not betray our own self. Today, choose to betray fear instead. September 14th. Stoics have a different way of praying. Instead of asking for things, we should ask for ways to help us become strong, resilient, and in control. More often than not, this makes us realize that we already have what we've been praying for. September 15th. At this point, we already know a lot about Stoicism and may even have the urge to share it with the world. However, we must never try to impress others with what we know. September 16th. Instead of aiming to be lucky, we must learn to be more persevering. This trait will help us overcome any difficulty with fortitude and resilience. September 17th. All of us have haters. What separates Stoics from the rest is how they deal with haters. Stoics determine first if the opinion is within their control. If it's something we can change, then we can accept it. On the other hand, if it isn't, then we simply accept the person. Hating a hater is only a waste of time. September 18th. Today we remind ourselves to never give in to pain. According to Epictetus, nothing is unending, and this is enough to guarantee that pain and suffering won't be here to stay. September 19th. Having a strong will is worthy of praise, but the author believes that it is better to have an adaptable will. After all, conditions change, so adaptability can come in handy. September 20th. According to Marcus Aurelius, the art of living is like wrestling. With the many attacks that we face, we should always be ready to rise above them, and just like professional wrestlers, we must train hard in order to achieve victory. September 21st. Unexpected situations can catch us off guard, but despite this, we must remain composed. If we allow these situations to affect us, we can be thrown off the path. Keep this in mind when surprises come our way. September 22nd. Stoics are no strangers to challenges. In fact, they believe that these challenges can help improve their abilities. We should keep this in mind whenever we feel like we're being tested. September 23rd. As previously stated, we have an inner fortress which protects the soul. To strengthen that fortress, we must train ourselves to give up anger, gossip, and negative habits. We can start with that training today. September 24th. Preparedness can only come with sufficient training. Today, as you help a friend move past his difficulties, accept that the same can also happen to you. This can sufficiently train us to be ready for similar situations in the future. September 25th. Our dependencies are our vulnerabilities. When someone takes them away from us, we can easily crumble. This goes to show that we are not in control of ourselves. Thus, before we become dependent upon something, we must first develop an indifference towards it. September 26th. We often take days off to escape work, even if it's just for a few days. When we go on vacations, the author wants us to remember that its purpose is to help us relax. Nevertheless, we must never take a break from our true purpose, to learn. September 27th. When we work, it mustn't be for prosperity. Instead, it must be for strengthening a character that can thrive in prosperity. When we do it this way, we do not become slaves to prosperity. September 28th. For today, the author simply wants to remind us that we hold the ultimate trump card, the ability to control what's inside us. This is the only power we need in order to live a good life. September 29th. Today, we should simply remind ourselves that everything will be okay, even when things suddenly go wrong. We have the choice to adjust how we react to these inconveniences. September 30th. Our mind is untouchable to others. Only we have control over it. We should always remember this, especially when we are being drawn to various temptations. October. Virtue and kindness. October 1st. Our virtues of truth, justice, and self-control should guide us throughout life. We must remember to always keep the flame burning so that we may know what it means to be happy. October 2nd. When we think of assets, we often think of money and investments. However, the author believes that valuable assets should not be affected by market fluctuations and disasters. Thus, our most valuable assets are our virtues. October 3rd. Human beings were made to help each other. However, we often seem to forget that we are all working towards the same end. Today, we are encouraged to pause and remember that we are interconnected with each other. October 4th. Today, we are reminded that all our actions can affect everyone, and that the actions of people around us can affect us too. Thus, we must always reflect on our actions before acting on them. October 5th. We must be careful with our words since they can never be unsaid. As much as possible, we must avoid making cruel and hurtful remarks. October 6th. A virtuous person rejoices in the success of others. Instead of nourishing jealousy and possessiveness, we must actively cheer them on instead. And since we're all interconnected, doing so is the right thing to do. October 7th. Today the author wants us to reflect on our wrongdoings and how they made us feel. When we commit a wrong against someone, we're actually committing the same wrong to ourselves. Keep this in mind whenever we are tempted to do wrong. October 8th. Pleasures make us feel good. However, the pleasures we get from material pleasures are merely fleeting. Instead, the author wants us to focus on pleasures derived from the virtues of wisdom, sobriety, kindness, and good character. October 9th. At this point, we know that our ultimate goal is to be good. In order to attain that, we must be willing to do good. Thus, this must be the standard by which we do our actions. October 10th. Today, the author wants to remind us that we must always live by our virtues. More specifically, these are the virtues of reverence and justice. October 11th. We must keep in mind that honesty should always be our default. It must be part of our reputation. Today, begin to live by honesty and serve as an example to others. October 12th. When we look at everyone with love, we become more understanding and compassionate, and the best part about it is that we can also get love in return. True enough, love is all we need. October 13th. Today, choose to be better than those who have hurt us. We must serve as an example to others that seeking revenge is not a good way to live. October 14th. Whenever we're in public, we often encounter people who can be annoying. When this happens, the author wants us to ignore that negative emotion and instead confront the person politely about what he is doing. In this way, you are helping him improve and make the place a better one for everyone else. October 15th. Truly virtuous persons do not succumb to negative judgments. Instead, they give people the benefit of the doubt. Today, we must choose to be more understanding of others. October 16th. Today, the author encourages us to spread the word about Stoicism. But instead of providing a long lecture, the best way to share this philosophy is to live by example. Be their source of inspiration. October 17th. Every encounter we have today will be an opportunity for kindness. As we go along with our day, choose to respond to people with kindness. October 18th. As much as possible, we must get rid of being two-faced to people. Instead, we must cultivate honesty and trustworthiness. After all, who would want to have false friends? October 19th. Whenever we notice a bad habit revealing itself, the author advises us to commit to a contrary virtue to counter. This may be as simple as getting up in order to beat laziness. October 20th. How do we know if we're living by the good life? When we begin to embody the principles of self-control, justice, freedom, courage, and abstinence from evil, then we know we're living the good life. October 21st. Sometimes we become too focused on how we want to be remembered by people. Unfortunately, dreaming about the future is only a waste of time. Instead, we must focus on being an inspiration to people right now. Start doing the right thing today. October 22nd. Day by day, we strive to become better at work or at the sports we're playing. This makes us forget that there is only one thing we should strive to be better at: being a good person. October 23rd. We must remind ourselves that even when we weren't born with the best qualities, we can always choose to be happy with them. Hold on to this thought when insecurities start kicking in. October 24th. Today we learn that goodness isn't something we get from others. Instead, it is something that has always been within us. Think about this whenever we want to find goodness. October 25th. The author shares that all of us have only two important tasks in life: to be good and to do what you love. All other tasks are just a waste of our time and energy. October 26th. Our moral, natural, and rational parts have a common goal: to help us live a good life. But to truly live that way, we must focus on only living in the here and now. October 27th. Our actions will always have repercussions. Reflect on them first before making a move. October 28th. By nature, we are all social beings. Fortunately, Stoicism helps us understand that we are interconnected with each other. Knowing that alone can help us build better and stronger relationships. October 29th. We should allow ourselves to be measured by our achievements or material possessions. Instead, we should be measured by our character. Conversely, this should also be our standard when we welcome people into our lives. October 30th. Today we are simply reminded that our study of philosophy should take center stage in our life. If we can spend hours a day on watching television shows, then why can't we spend the same amount in order to improve ourselves? Think about it. October 31st. The most important thing to remember is that we were all born as good individuals. Whenever we feel bogged down by wrong actions and ideas, choose to focus on the fact that we are innately good beings. November. Acceptance. Amor fati. November 1st. When we spend too much time on wishful thinking, we fail to live in the present. Today, more than just accepting what happened, we must choose to enjoy it. November 2nd. No matter how prepared we can be, sometimes things just don't pan out the way we hoped it to be. When this happens, we shouldn't feel discouraged. Instead, we should learn from this experience. November 3rd. Everything prescribed by philosophy will help us heal our soul. We should keep this in mind whenever we are tempted to disobey these teachings. November 4th. Today the author wants us to know that change is simply what it is. It is neither good nor bad. Events, after all, are objective. How we react to them is what matters. November 5th. The author notes that not all of us believe in God. However, he also tells us to stop believing that we are in control of everything. Otherwise, we become addicted to control. November 6th. Letting go of control over everything will feel strange at first, but believe in that in the long run, everything will fall into place. November 7th. True power comes from focusing inward instead of outward. When we know how to rule over ourselves, the rest of our empire follows. November 8th. Today we are reminded that we are mere actors in a play directed by life. We must remember that our role is to be good regardless of the senses that come into play. November 9th. To help us accept changes, the author wants us to know that everything is fluid. That is, nothing stays constant forever. Reflect on this thought today. November 10th. We tend to believe that we are not the same human beings as those who walked the earth centuries before we did. But when you really try to look at things, we are exactly the same as our ancestors, only key practices have changed. November 11th. We must not confuse acceptance with passivity. Acceptance means embracing the outcome even when it's not what we had hoped for. This makes us stronger than when we settle for mere passivity. November 12th. All of us possess the power to rule over ourselves. When we know this, we make reasoned choices for every event we encounter. After all, this is our duty to ourselves, and accepting that duty alone makes us strong. November 13th. Whenever our responsibilities become overwhelming, our tendency is to complain about it to others. However, does it help us accomplish anything? Better yet, does it help us lighten the load? Usually, the answer is no. November 14th. Today, we remind ourselves that all events are objective and how we see them all depends on our choices. Thus, always choose what will lead to our self-improvement. November 15th. By now, we must already understand that everything can and is change. If we keep on fighting it, the harder it will be for us. Thus, all we have to do is embrace it. November 16th. In Stoicism, both hope and fear are considered as one and the same, mere projections about the future, and that makes them the enemy of the present. Again, we are reminded to choose to focus on the here and now. November 17th. When we commit faults, our philosophy is there to help us move forward. The author insists that we do the same when others make mistakes against us. November 18th. Today we learn about the 4 habits of the Stoic mind. These are as follows: to accept what is true, to work for what's good for all, to balance out our needs and desires with the things that are within our control, and to embrace whatever life throws our way. These are the only things that we should keep in mind as we live our days. November 19th. When we believe in a higher power, whatever we may call it, nothing seems to go contrary to plan. Today, accept that we are not in control of everything and simply surrender to this higher power. November 20th. When we are focused on the present, we can no longer be tempted by thoughts of the future. We begin to appreciate the beauty of the present, and that's all that matters. November 21st. Today, when we experience happiness, just enjoy it. Understand that it is a fleeting thing, so don't try to hold on to it. That's what it means to live in the present. November 22nd. Often the reason for our devastation is our failure to anticipate possible outcomes. Conversely, when we accept that certain things are bound to happen, we are no longer affected by them in case they do happen. November 23rd. Today we are made to understand that attachments are our true enemy. When we become attached, that makes it hard for us to embrace change. Instead, we must learn to be more resilient and adaptable. November 24th. From today onwards, we must train ourselves to believe that everything is fleeting and that what we possess is not ours. This makes it easier for us to let go of our attachments. November 25th. When we succumb to sickness, we realize that what it destroys is only the body and not the soul. But when we fall prey to luxuries, we can see that it destroys both the body and the soul. This is why lottery winners think winning is a curse, while cancer survivors believe that being sick is the best thing that has ever happened to them. November 26th. The author points out that what makes acceptance difficult is how we're always comparing ourselves to others. However, when we consider them as human beings, we realize that there is no difference between us at all. Thus, we should choose to see them from this perspective. November 27th. When we are clouded by negativity, more negative thoughts are provoked. Thus, we should choose to focus on the positive. Today, observe what makes you feel these negative thoughts, whether it is politics or gossip, and consciously choose to stay away from them. When you do so, peace of mind follows. November 28th. When you feel like someone makes you feel annoyed, try to reflect on the following question. Are you being too sensitive? Sometimes the problem lies on how we perceive things, and if that doesn't work, just choose to let it go. November 29th. Today we are simply reminded that everything will be okay regardless of what happens. November 30th. For the last day of the month, the author wants us to follow the reason in all things, the logos. He goes on to add that doing so helps us gain self-composure and a positive disposition, but most importantly, it instills acceptance and readiness to act. December. Meditation on morality. December 1st. For the first day of December, we are made to pretend like today is the end of our lives. This provides us with a deeper sense of appreciation towards everything we love. December 2nd. What would you do if you suddenly found out that you only had a few days to live? The answer to this question must guide everything we say and do every day. December 3rd. Living and dying aren't meant to be easy. Fortunately, philosophy will help us get through both. Reflect on that whenever we don't feel like studying seriously. December 4th. What makes letting go so hard is the belief that we own it. However, everything we have in this world are merely borrowed. Keep this in mind whenever we are having troubles with letting go. December 5th. Today we are encouraged to keep death and exile in front of our eyes. This alone will be enough to prevent us from succumbing to our earthly desires. December 6th. All of us are in danger of having our lives taken away at any moment. Keep this in mind whenever we are tempted to do something shameful or selfish. December 7th. When we think of our own morality, an irrational fear takes over. But instead of wasting our time on being scared, the author encourages us to become better persons instead, the kind of person we've always wanted to be. December 8th. Life is too short to be bothered by the problems we're facing. Instead, we must choose to conquer these problems by accepting that they are all forms of parts of life. December 9th. If there is something that we can never get back, it's time. Today, choose to spend your time on things that truly matter. Doing otherwise is a waste of such precious resource. December 10th. Today, the author wants us to be more discerning about how we spend our time. If we are in denial about death, our tendency is to spend our time freely, and that can be such a waste. December 11th. When we face each day bravely, we begin to live truly. Living this way will always be better than trying to preserve oneself by doing nothing. December 12th. Come to think of it, all things die, from people to companies and ideas. It's all just a matter of who dies first. When we think of it this way, we begin to realize how fleeting life can be. Today, we reflect on that. December 13th. The years we live on this earth is just a number. The length of time we have lived is not considered as living as if we fail to focus on the present. December 14th. We don't know how long we have left. So today we must start living by all the principles we have learned. The sooner we become free from external desires and temptations, the sooner we are able to truly live life. December 15th. Spending each day as if it is our last is not easy. Nonetheless, the author says that trying to do so is enough. Let us not be discouraged if it seems too hard at first. December 16th. We must continuously remind ourselves that the only thing we have control over is our reasoned choice. Today, be confident that our reasoned choice will guide us in living the good life. December 17th. Today, the author simply wants us to reflect on the following questions. Who am I? What do I need? What do I like? What are the things that are important to me? He shares that doing so will help us do what we love before it's too late. December 18th. It can be tempting to think that we are better than everyone else. To counter this thought, keep in mind that we all end up the same way. We all end up in death. December 19th. When we begin to think that we're great and powerful, try to think of the bigger picture. that we are all but a speck in the universe. That is enough to get your mind back to reality. December 20th. The thought of death can be scary, but what we should really be afraid of is the fear of death itself. It keeps us from living the life we've always wanted, and that is something that is truly scary. December 21st. Today we reflect on what we've done throughout the years we've been living. How did we spend our time, and did we use it to live fully? Think about it. December 22nd. Today the author encourages us to write down our experiences. He believes that all our experiences have value and a corresponding wisdom. Write all of these down. December 23rd. For today's meditation, the author wants us to ask ourselves a simple question. What are we truly afraid of losing? When we answer this question, we begin to realize that death isn't really something to be afraid of. December 24th. Earthly pleasures are all meaningless. Whenever we find ourselves tempted to obtain more of these material obsessions, try to think of what their value is. Nothing. December 25th. Every day we encounter things that will test our patience, but keep in mind that we have the choice to not let them bother us. Always choose this option. December 26th. Life is long enough if we know how to live. By staying focused on the present, we realize that we've lived long enough, even when we've truly lived for just a few months. December 27th. Our body is weak, but our soul is not. Thus, when the body succumbs to sickness, don't allow your soul to give in as well. December 28th. We should not succumb to the fear of being forgotten. After all who died are no longer remembered. As Marcus Aurelius put it, everything only lasts for a day. The same can be said of our memories. December 29th. Today we are encouraged to simply give thanks. For whatever it may be, pause for a while and just give thanks. December 30th. All of us will encounter trials and misfortunes. We may be well equipped in terms of artillery, but what truly crushes misfortune is our calm disposition. Thus, we should live every day with a calm mind. December 31st. Finally, keep in mind that the main purpose of this book is to help us live a good life. Instead of just focusing on these theories, go out and live out the principles. The secret to living a good and happy life is philosophy. More specifically, it lies in the philosophy of Stoicism. Although Stoicism seems like a new concept, the truth is that it has already been in existence since the ancient times. It refers to the study of enduring hardship without any display of emotion. Because of this, people think that Stoics are cold and completely detached from everyone around them. However, the opposite is true. Stoicism is embraced by some of the most outstanding men in history, like Marcus Aurelius, Cato the Younger, George Washington, Theodore Roosevelt, and so many more. Proof that Stoics aren't unkind and uncaring. With the long list of accomplished Stoics, we may begin to think that Stoicism is only for those who have certain qualifications. Fortunately, that is not the case. The author believes that all of us can embrace this philosophy. To begin with this philosophy, we must begin by understanding that there are three critical disciples involved in Stoicism. There are the disciplines of perception, the discipline of action, and the discipline of will. The discipline of perception helps us clearly see the world around us. In order to do so, we must be able to control our emotions first. You see, when our perceptions are tainted by our feelings, especially the negative ones, we won't be able to see things clearly, and when our vision isn't clear, we end up making the wrong choices to live by. The second discipline, the discipline of action, deals with how we act on the decisions we make and reflect on the purpose for doing so. In order to perfect the discipline of action, we must focus on only doing the right thing. But doing the right thing can only be made if we possess a strong sense of duty, excellence, problem-solving skills, and act pragmatically. Finally, and most importantly, the last discipline deals with our willpower. The discipline of will teaches us the ways in which we can accept the things that we cannot change. It is also the discipline responsible for teaching us the ways by which we can come up with good judgment. And ultimately, this discipline is here to help us gain a true understanding of who we are and what we are in this world. In order to learn this discipline, we must go through a series of exercises geared towards developing resilience, virtue, and acceptance. It will also push us to reflect on our morality so that we may have a clear idea of our purpose for living. No matter how hard we really try to comprehend the teachings of Stoicism, we will not experience its full effects if we do not fully embrace it as our new philosophy. As with all other philosophies, this requires us to choose to be a Stoic. But above all, we must also choose to act on everything we've learned. Otherwise, we will find ourselves back to where we started. All our efforts will become futile.